Okay, Keith, you're live.
Okay, so if we can call the meeting to order, we've had a little bit of a delay as the chambers was cleaned. Now, it's 5:55. So if you need to talk, I would ask that you talk in the hallway, please. If you need to talk, step out. It's fine, but we can't run the meeting if people are having side conversations. So thank you. So if we'll call the meeting to order. If I could have a motion to approve the minutes from October 19th and November 8th. Moving forward. Foley, second.
I'll second.
Elaine Daly. Thank you. Are there any additions, changes? In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Now, what I've asked all of the department heads to do is to rely on their written submissions unless they have something that they really need to share. And I think at this point, the only person that will have something to share is, for sure, is Mary Beth Leeson. But we'll go through, and if someone has questions, of course, just ask away. So let's start with real property and Jennifer and Delicato. Does anyone have questions for Jennifer? Very good. I think
I got one question.
yeah, okay, Tim.
Are we gonna have a countywide reassessment? Just kidding. Okay, next.
Next. Yeah,
I'm sorry, what was that?
that was a Tim Lattimore, don't pay any attention question. Even Tim was. So which of these, well, we won't do the resolutions. We'll do the resolutions together, and then I don't have to determine which is you and which is treasurer. Okay, next is the treasurer, Mr. Orman. I spoke with him this afternoon. He didn't have anything to add. Does anyone have questions of Mr. Orman, our treasurer? Hearing none. Good. Director of Finance, Mary Beth Leeson, doesn't have her report, but I think she has something to share with us. So Mary Beth, are you here or are you online?
I'm online.
So if you want to share.
Okay, so I just wanted to share with the group, when I did my third quarter presentation of our financials, we talked a little bit about potentially putting some funds into the building capital reserve as we start down the road of looking at where our building is going. I've looked at cash position as well as our fund balance position, even with considering taking the $2 million out of our fund balance to use in our 22 budget. I do think that we could put another $2 million into the building capital reserve if that's something that the legislature wanted to consider. That would leave us with a projected fund balance of about 17.9 million, which leaves us about square in the middle of our fund balance policy.
One of the things I would add to this is that in discussions, one of the uses for fund balance and cash flow is to ensure that you don't have to do short-term borrowing. One of the advantages of the recovery line is that we have extra cash. So we got 7 million this year. Last year we're going to set this year 7 million this year, then 7 million next year, which we can use to cover cash flow. So we're in a great cash position. And that's one of the things I know I always worry about, but it's something we won't have to worry about. And as Mary Beth said, the 17.9 to 18 million is right in the middle of where we want to be. So the question is for this group, if this is something that you would like to see a resolution on either well, it have to be next month, end of the year, to move $2 million to her proposal, thinking is $2 million to the capital reserve. So that's something you want to look at doing?
I disagree that it has to happen next month. It can happen now.
Well, I don't know if people are ready. Yeah, it could happen now, it could happen anytime. So
I had a couple questions. Mary Beth, for the people in the room, especially the newly elected, would you just run down a little bit as to what we got locked in the lockbox for capital improvement. We put away some money over the years, and I'm just
Yeah,
wondering, tax rate has come down over the last 3 years. Is there any chance of maybe going instead of to a zero, maybe something less than a zero? Inflation is really caught up to gasoline and propane and a lot of different things that are eating away at people's income. Is there any way that we could maybe go to a negative?
well, I think that would be something that the legislature could decide to propose, taking additional fund balance as part of balancing the 22 budget, and then, reduce the tax levy. I think that would be something that the legislature would have to work with Lynn Marinelli and decide how they want to do that. There's plus and minus to that, I think, because, down the road, you're going to have to probably bond for a building or building renovation.
Would you tell me how much is in the lockbox right now?
For building capital reserve? Is that what
Yes.
you're asking?
Yes, please.
4 million?
The initial deposit into the building capital reserve was $4 million. There was a little bit spent out of that, so we are at 3,947,559.
Keith,
And I think that Mr. Carr got in some proposals from some engineering firms to take a look at, see what the cost would be to renovate and or maybe build.
That's,
It's on the agenda tonight.
yeah, we'll talk about that later.
All right.
So, Elaine?
Mary Beth, I have a question. Are you saying that if we were to take $2 million and put it into the building reserve in anticipation of moving forward finally with the county office building, the 17 million left, you've calculated what you think the potential give back this year to the fund balance would be as well, and that's where you're hitting that 17 million?
That's correct. So as part of Lynn's budget work, she and we've talked through this, has projected where we think we're going to end 2021. And then taking out the $2 million for the 22 budget, and then the $2 million for a building capital reserve would put us at that $17 million mark.
Based on our current $160 million budget, our policy says we should be between 15 or 16 million and 21. Is that also kind of true?
So we should be between 14.1 million and 21.2 million. So the 17.9 is almost in the middle of that range.
Anyone else? Ms. Ladner has another question. Does anyone else have anything to say?
Can I interrupt for just a
You
moment?
may.
Eileen just did a little research on what was sprayed in here, just so in case anyone is concerned about it. You want to just take a moment?
Okay, so Gary Duckett just sent the MSDF sheet, and so if people are worried about it, even if you were applying it, there's no respiratory protection typically required. But if people do have some sensitivity and difficulty breathing, the advice is to leave the area. So, but I don't hear people coughing as much as when we first came in here, so, but everybody's a little bit different, so, yeah, no, my opinion on it. But overall, it doesn't seem like it's a health concern.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ladner, do you have a question?
Mary Beth, we have improved the rating of the bonding rating, and if we're going to go into major projects, it is nice to have a low rate if we do have to borrow a large sum of money. Would it be prudent to maybe with the cash flow that we have, try to improve our rating, or do we have the highest rating now?
I don't believe we are at the very highest, but we do have a very strong rating. I would anticipate that the advice would be that as we move forward in this project, we'll go through a whole evaluation with bond counsel, and then they would make recommendations on how to proceed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, right, Helen? Oh. What, did you want to make a motion to insert that? Okay. So what are people's feelings about the revisiting this? Actually, we could even do it Thursday. We have a business committee start meeting then. And we're going to vote on the budget or vote on budget changes. Do you want to consider it? We have to have a resolution. So do you want that prepared or no?
I would support that.
And the reason to do and add to that fund is to eventually bond for less in terms of
Yeah.
putting the building up. This would be down payment on the cost that we would have long term.
Yeah. Mr. Foley?
Did we go into possibility of a new building with cost, or is this just kind of a precursor?
Well, we're going to be discussing that later, the contract with someone to actually do that. It's on the agenda tonight.
Right, okay, because
Well, we know it's going to be the somewhere between many millions and many millions
right,
in that range.
we were talking about renovation versus building, a
Yes.
new building, and just kind of understanding what that may look like. But what we're suggesting is trying to utilize the 2 million just to kind of get in front of it for
Yes.
either project. Okay.
Yeah, it'll just be less we have to borrow.
Just one last thing. There's been talk, and I think I'm totally clear that there's some in the county, and this would be the time. I mean,
23, 24.
it's a small bond that will be paid off.
Ms. Vitale?
I'll make a motion so we can hear that discussion and we end the discussion. My motion will be to put 2 million into the building reserve and 250,000 in the building repair reserve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I think we'll have to have a formal, do we have to have a formal resolution, Mr. Attorney, or if we pass this, is this passed on then to the legislature?
No, you would do the resolution at your next, on Thursday.
Okay, so the motion is
Basically,
calling
it's a motion calling
for a
for,
resolution.
to prepare the resolution.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this motion calling for a resolution to put 2 million in the capital reserve fund and, I'm sorry, 250,000.
The building repair reserve.
250,000 in the building repair reserve. And we have a second from Mr. Peters. Is there any discussion on that?
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Yeah, Mr. Pinckney.
Yes, just quick question. Can any of that money be utilized for roads also?
No.
No. No, okay. Thank you.
Supporting this would just enable the resolution to come to the full legislature for vote.
Well, it's calling for a resolution to be considered at our next meeting, which is on Thursday, I guess.
Yep, that's the special ledge meeting.
Well, no, that's next Ways and Means.
It's yours.
I don't think. they
Uh,
consider it a special meeting. I'm sorry, was that Tucker?
So in concept and theory here, we're talking about moving money to a reserve for the county. As we know, there's going to be a high turnover of legislators this year, and if they want to move in another direction come January 1st, I just want to make sure we're not tying their hands. I mean, if we put this money in this reserve, it's not particularly earmarked for that specific building, correct? I mean, they could get used for any building the county owns, right?
Yeah. It's not project specific. It's building specific. It can be used for roads. Ms. Lattimore?
The bottom falls out of this economy and we had to go into that reserve. The way to get that money out of the reserve would be a 2/3 vote or
Correct.
said
Two-thirds.
2/3 vote, we could take it out of reserve.
For the restricted purpose.
For the restricted use,
No further restrictions. It's not possible to get it out.
not to keep the lights on.
To keep the
Okay,
lights
any
on.
other discussion?
Sorry. So it's re-
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I,
I'm sorry, was that Tucker? Okay, so the motion passes, one opposed. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Meredith.
Thank you.
Next, we have human resources. Again, I think everyone has a report. As far as I know, there are no special things that need to be addressed with human resources. Is that true, Colleen? Do you have anything that needs addressing? Hearing none. Okay, good. Resolutions, I'm afraid we need an executive session. So if I can have an executive session to discuss the credit of credit or employment history of a particular person or corporations on management leading to appointment or employment of a particular person or corporation.
So moved.
So we have a motion and a second. So are we set up in caucus room 1? Okay, so we go to caucus room 1 for this discussion. And then,
Why don't we just,
I'm gonna let you finish your sentence.
oh, and then we have those that are joining us remotely, I think have the link.
Yes.
Be inviting others to join us?
Yeah, any of all of the
I'll be
elected,
elected.
the newly elected,
Yeah.
yes.
Good.
Our turn. I just went, hey, Elaine. Eileen. Oh, Eileen.
Hey, Mike, did you get the link that I sent for executive session? I sent it via email, probably like 3:30.
Judy. Judy.
Paul, can you put the Andy Griffith Show back on? You're muted, by the way.
Guess he's done.
You're good, Keith.
Back in session here, we're ready for resolutions. The Ways and Means, there are 11 Ways and Means resolutions. We need to handle, take Ways and Means 11 separately. Are people okay with, well, do I have a motion to bundle 1 through 10?
Move it, Petrus.
Petrus and Bailey. Anyone want any of these separated? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, Ways and Means 11, reads, as you've seen it, whereas the office building located at 160 was originally constructed, whereas the structure has become technologically outdated, whereas the county would like to engage the services of a firm to perform a feasibility study, whereas the purchasing director released an RFP for the feasibility study, whereas Barton and Judas Architects have been selected to provide the county office building feasibility study. Now therefore be it resolved that the Cayuga County Legislature hereby authorizes and directs the chair to enter into an agreement with Barton and Judas for a feasibility study of the county office building for an amount not to exceed $40,000, and resolve that these will come for a decrease in county manager's salary, well, you all can read that, the account, and an increase in professional services, 111454059. So if someone could move that on the
I'll move
committee.
it.
Second.
Well, I'm not on
Mr.
the.
Lambert's on the committee, so
I'll
moved by Mr. Vitale, second by Mr. Polio. Any discussion?
I do.
I'm sorry, Tucker, did you have a comment?
Yes, I do have a comment. I'll be a no vote on this. I would have preferred to see this go to a small local business as opposed to a large out-of-state one.
Very good. Any other comments before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
One opposed, the resolution passes. Thank you. Okay, next up, Health and Human Services.
Okay, go for it.
Yes, ma'am.
Health and Human Services had 5 resolutions this month. They've been through committee. They were fully supported. I would a motion to bundle HH1 through HH5 unless someone wants any of them separated out.
Move.
We have a motion and a second.
Second.
Very good. Any discussion on any of these? All in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion's passed. Government operations.
Mr. Chairman, government operations had 5 resolutions. One did not receive a motion. So I'll take a motion for GO 1 through 4 as a bundle unless one wants one single up.
Move it.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on 1 through 4?
Just number 2, we're gonna save a lot of money by using both these, is that correct?
That's what I've heard is it can be a very fruitful partnership.
Thank you, we should have done that earlier.
Tim, you should have.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, 205 was setting the date for the public hearing on the tentative county budget. The discussion at government operations was that basically we had some issues to iron out and questions to be answered prior to that. So some of those have, some of those have not. Currently in the resolution, it lists the date, which I think is fine by all, but it has salary of the chair, vice chair, chair people of standing committees, so on and so forth. And so there was discussion on maybe what those salaries would be and how they got to their amounts. As we can see right there, chairperson is at $30,000. And what's actually in the budget, as I understand it, could be up to 60,000. So there was questions that arose why it was at 30,000. I'll let someone else explain that made that decision because my name is on it, but it was crafted, kind of with the powers that be through the resolution process. So if anyone wants to speak up.
I'll make the motion so we can have discussion.
Okay.
The resolution's been moved. Can we have a second?
I'll second.
Second, okay. Discussion.
Okay,
Is that you, Mr. Pinckney?
it is.
Yes.
So,
You're up.
where did the resolve of the chairman going back to 30,000 come from? Was that a committee discussion?
Not a discussion that we had at government operations. I think that Aileen or Rich might be able to answer that, or Lynn, if she's on.
Sure. So in crafting the budget, I kept the salary the same for the chair. As we know, we vote on chair every year. I'm not knowing the future. I didn't want to make this assumption alone. I wanted to have an open discussion with the legislature and the future legislators to see, well, I'm sorry, you're not really part of the discussion, but you'll be listening to the discussion, to see what the flavor is of the body to continue. Also, and so I wanted to have this discussion. In addition, it was shared with me from the county attorney's office that you can increase someone's salary during the course of the term of their office. You can't decrease the salary during the term of their office. And so that's why I put it in the resolution where I asked to put, we had a discussion and it was put in there. I didn't put it there. We had discussed over the past couple of years, in the absence of administrator, if there was appropriate staff, that the chairperson, when they're no longer doing all the extra duties of the lacking administrator, could go back to the original salary of 30,000 when there are people in place to get things done in the county. Currently, there is no administrator, there is no operations officer right now. But so I didn't want to set it up so it's up to this body to start it at 60, and then I was under the understanding or the impression or whatever that you couldn't lower it. I think I think some legislators are under the impression that as soon as we staff up, we will lower that. So I didn't want to take that away. I want to make sure you guys all were part of this discussion. It's not up for me to decide how it goes. So that's why I put it back to 30. If you wanted to start it at 30 in the new year and go up depending on the situation, that's up to this body. But you can clarify, because initially it was told to me that you could decrease, but.
Yeah, some of the procedural issues here. Under the county law, you have to publish two things through the budget process. One is the notice of the public hearing, when you look at the tentative budget as modified by whatever takes place through the resolution process of Ways and Means. Secondly, you have to publish a notice that reflects the salaries for all the legislators, including the chair. And the way the law is written, you have to publish notice of the maximum salary. So you can publish the notice, and through the budget process, if you decide to reduce the salary before folks take office next year, yes, you can do that. But what you can't do is exceed the maximum salary as set forth in your public notice. So from a timing standpoint, it doesn't make sense to publish notice of the salaries to the legislators until you have those numbers pretty well firmed up through your tentative budget process. And to kind of answer the what you was saying there, I mean, mid-year, can you change salaries for the legislators? Yes, provided you do not exceed what's contained in the public notice that's going to go out when you set your public hearing. Does that make sense?
So I wasn't at government operations, but it was told there, and I think it was told to me also, that we couldn't decrease the salary once it's been voted on and someone's taken that office under the impression of that salary. Oh, okay. So you do.
That's also.
Okay, I'm confused now. Okay, that's what, thank you, because I'm confused.
Isn't that what you just said?
Yeah,
Public
you're
notice.
talking about setting the salary for the fiscal year of 2022.
Yeah.
Which is not the full term of a legislator. So between now and, the remainder of the terms, can you change the salary of a legislator? Yes, but for fiscal year 2022,
For the
you can't
chair, it's a
go
1 year,
above.
right.
You can't go above what's in the published notice.
So why do we start it at the lowest?
Right, that's right.
Right, because I had the understanding of the opposite, the reversal of
Right.
what he's saying, that you just agreed to. So now I'm confused.
Right, so
I'm
if
confused.
if the public, if you have to publish the maximum salary we're willing to pay, I guess technically that's $60,000. So I'm confused why we would start with 30.
Right.
If I may, though, we need a clarifying
Yeah.
Well,
question.
I think it's I think what you guys are confused over is the timing question. By the time you get to your public hearing, your tentative budget should be pretty well solidified. And by the time you get to your public hearing, I think you put all these laws together, the net result is, by the time you get to your public hearing, the salaries for your legislators should be pretty well set.
Pretty well, but
I
not
mean,
set.
what you don't want to have, theoretically, I suppose you could make a change between adopting the budget in January 1 or January 4 when the chair takes office. But once the person is in office, you're not going backwards off of that salary.
But I've got two clarifying questions here. One is.
Well, so do I. I'd like to continue.
We have a public hearing to hear what the public has to say. The budget can be changed as a result of that testimony.
But
Right.
there's a separate county law provision, I have copies of it here, that basically says you can fix the salary of your legislators at any time, but you cannot exceed what's contained in the public notice. That goes
Okay, well, that's my second question. then. Public notice for 2021 set the chair's salary at 30,000.
Right.
But we had we passed a law to increase that to 47.5, whatever it was. So was that illegal?
What's that?
Was that illegal?
I'm not going to say that because I didn't make that decision, but I'm just saying for this budget and what I have, and I have the statutes right here.
Madam Chair, you gotta give all that money back.
Jesus.
Mr. Batman,
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, please, go ahead.
okay, thanks, Keith. So I guess I would just comment, and I think everybody is aware of this, but I would just to reiterate, even if we moved at lightning speed, we would not be able to establish the new legislature with the new districts nor an executive until 2023 at what essentially is the end of this term of the legislature. So my reminder would be that we still need to fulfill the executive functions of a pretty sizable operation for the next 2 years. Thank you.
Ms. Foley,
Okay, so what's budgeted for 2022 probably should have been in our original resolution, which is the $60,000 amount. I think Aileen at a certain point said, okay, it can always be increased. But as I understand it, that's not what Rich is saying. It's not, it just was a mix up. We just had a conversation where all of us could not understand the difference. So, if we make it $60,000 and advertise that, we know that that can be the maximum, and it can change from that point. It can go down, but it's not going to go above that. It satisfies both needs. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Okay.
okay,
So-
so you go down from 60, but not above,
Right,
if that's advertised.
right.
Okay.
So can I make it just,
Motion to move it to 60.
yes, an amendment for a motion to move it to 60,000? That would be the chair line.
Yeah, hold on a minute. This was not moved at government operations,
This was not moved.
so you
because
don't
we
need an
had-
amendment. All you have to do is make a motion, and if you want to change the numbers, wait, there's a
I already
motion
made
that's
the
been made. So never
He
mind.
made
You
the
have to do
motion.
it.
The resolution's on the
We need
table.
to make an amendment to this.
Yes, because it is on the table.
I'll amend my motion to 47.5.
To what?
47.5.
Okay, who seconded that?
Pinkney seconded the original motion to put it on the table.
For discussion, all right.
Is that change acceptable for you?
No,
In that case, we have 30,000 on the table. Mr. Foley, you had a change?
Okay, yes. And just to be clear, I mean, we've already moved the resolution in its entirety. We just haven't voted on it.
That's correct.
So I'm making the motion for an amendment to move that to 60,000.
Okay,
second that,
who's that?
second that.
So that the motion is made on the amendment 60 and seconded. So discussion on that. That's fine. One of the things I would like to point out on this before we vote is just a reminder for people in the group. And I'll make this reminder when we consider it at the larger meeting too, that the motion for the operations manager was originally defeated based upon what a number of people in this body said, that they would not support it unless there was a reduction to 30,000 for the chairman of the legislature. Well, that operations manager position has now been approved and it's in process of being filled. So this seems an inconsistency to me in terms of position. So there's nothing to talk about tonight. We need to move on. But when you have the public hearing, when you have the full discussion of the budget, I'll be asking those people who voted against the initial resolution what's changed in their calculus. That now suggests that it should be 60 even with an operations manager.
And just.
May I speak?
Wait, Elaine's speaking now.
Even if we move this to 60,000, this is for the notice of the maximum salary established for the public hearing. There is an opportunity to look at, because there is no operations manager, if one's hired by mid-year, this 60, this is for publication only at this point. There could be modifications to this. It made at any time as we negotiate as a Ways and Means Committee. And I think your motion of 45 something may be to keep a full-time chair half the year, at least until an operations manager is, I mean, we could consider any of that.
That's correct.
Right now, this is just to make sure that the maximum salary gets posted to the public of 60,000.
That's correct.
Right.
Hey, Mr. Pinckney, did you have a comment? I'm sorry.
No, that's clarity, and that's all I was looking for. And
Great.
you can get your answer in 6 months when we hire that person.
Yeah.
So in that case, let's vote on the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed.
Who's the opposed?
Whitman.
No.
And I'll oppose it as well. So, but I think that's still, what's that count?
I may have to reconsider my opposition.
Is that just Whitman and Batman that are opposed, or is there another?
Vitality.
That's,
With Foley, Elaine.
a different trio.
Okay, so it passes 4-3. Thank
different
you.
duo.
Now can we vote on the motion itself, or the resolution itself? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
So that passes. Very good, thank you. So the public hearing then is set for December 9th at 6:15. And with these things. Okay, thank you. Planning, Mr. Pinckney.
Can you put those two up, please? Thank you. Where are we? Here we go. Okay, so we might as well do these one at a time. I got a feeling might be a little kick in the can here. So planning has two resolutions. We'll do one at a time. PL 1, authorizing create fill a part-time position, administrative assistant within the Department of Planning and Economic Development with 100% reimbursement from the county from the CCDC and setting the salary and department reimbursement for the position. Can I have a motion?
Moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion.
Ms. Lane?
I guess my only unclearness on this is whether this passes or fails, in order to fill this position next year and create and fill this, it is not in the 2022 tentative budget. Wouldn't it make more sense as we deliberate what we need to add to the budget to accommodate this? Because if it passes tonight and he goes to fill it in January, you're going to have to identify $12,000 to come from some source because it's not in the tentative budget. I think it makes more sense as we do our deliberations to decide if we're going to add the funding to cover this position in entirety or for half the year or whatever we decide. And then if that happens, then it paves the way for this position to move forward after January of 2022. Right now, this position is not recognized in the 2022 budget, nor will passing this accomplish that.
So is that a motion, Elaine, to do it for 1 year?
Well, there's no, I
Yeah.
think your point is there's no money in the budget.
Yeah, I'd like to deliberate it and add the money to accommodate it on the 18th, when we're starting to look at potentially adding to the tentative budget. I don't think it makes sense to present this and pass it tonight, because it can't accomplish what he wants it to, given in January.
Okay, so Keith, any other discussion?
Is that a motion to table or?
I mean, I think we should table it and we should consider adding the money so he can accomplish what he needs to. Because I did talk to Steve. I understand what he wants to do. He's not been able, even with his 3 months of orientation, to orient whether it's going to be the Sue's replacement or it isn't.
I'll second the table.
Was that Ben?
Now, we have a special Ways and Means meeting on the 18th.
We do.
Are we allowed to table to that meeting, or because it's not, okay, so you want to table it to the 18th?
And that's when, yes,
Okay. So there's a motion to table to the 18th when we consider the 2022 budget. It's a second. Any discussion on the table motion?
Can I have a roll call vote?
of the synchronous.
A what?
A roll call vote.
I didn't hear.
Yes, you can.
Yes, I can do that. All right, ready, guys? This is the motion to table. Batman,
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, was that a yes?
Yes.
Daley? Foley?
No.
Petrus?
No.
Pinckney?
No,
Vitale? Sorry, Ben, I didn't hear you.
Yeah.
Whitman,
No.
so that does not pass. 4 no's.
Now we have the resolution. The, I would like, I don't have, oh, there's a resolution in front of us. I would like to amend this. Oh, I don't have the resolution. There's a line that says that this is 100% funded by CCDC and it will have no impact on the budget. Well, if that's not the case, the CCDC $30,000 is in revenues, is recorded as revenue in the budget with no expenditure. So and that's what Ms. Daly was getting at. There will be a cost in the 2022 budget of whatever this is for, $12,000. So
Keith.
My,
I'm sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So am I correct in my understanding? I'm sorry, I couldn't get my question out fast enough or my mute turned off fast enough before. Either way, if we pass this, we're going to have to address this at the special ways and means in order to add the expenditure in the 22 budget. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
And if that's understood, then I'm good with how it's written. I just want to make sure that we understand that this is not covered currently because there's a revenue and no expenditure. 2022 budget. What is expenditure that's consumed in that budget? So, okay, that's fine then, if that's understood. So can we vote on this?
yeah,
All in
Yes,
favor?
please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. I think that's, how many opposed? Three opposed. So motion passes. Very good.
okay. PL2,
Oh, no, we haven't got PL2. God, that was only PL1.
Yeah.
Whoops.
it might take a while.
Did you know those?
Okay, amended at planning PL2 resolution authorizing the award of construction bids and contracts. I can't see, for the Sterling Nature Center Capital Improvement Project and authorizing the county funding to complete the project.
We have a motion.
I'll move it Foley.
Second.
Second.
And thank you.
Discussion.
Yeah, I would, whether it passes or it doesn't, I would like to propose an amendment to PL2. And under the last resolve, the county legislature authorizes the finance director to transfer a total of $861,807 to the Sterling Nature Capital H account from the following account, and that would be the ARPA Fund A0134-54000. I'm making the motion to reconsider where the funding for this project will come from. And at this point, I would support it coming from ARPA as we did with the Emerson Park. It does meet one of the criterias in the ARPA funding under response to COVID. Park enhancement is one of the buckets that is eligible. And I feel more comfortable taking it from ARPA than from fund balance and the economic development fund.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second discussion on the amendment.
Just for clarification, Keith, we are talking about that, we're talking about that full amount of the 861,000 and change, correct? It's just a matter of changing where it comes from.
Yes.
That's the motion. Mr. Foley, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just for clarification, the original resolution had roughly 400,000 coming from general fund, 400,000 coming from the
The county economic development for
Economic
461,000.
Right.
Yeah.
And is there a reason why it might be more beneficial to do it out of ARPA funds?
Yep.
Can you explain that?
Well, in my mind, especially if we're going to be moving forward with a $2 million reserve, why would we take another almost $1 million out of fund balance at this point in time? When this is an eligible expense, we've done similar projects with the earmarking for Emerson Park. And if we look at the Cayuga County Economic Development account, this would pretty much, it has 667,000 in it, would pretty much clean that account out. And my understanding from the history is this is an account that can be used for leveraging economic development projects. So I think that's the reason for my making the motion.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the amendment? Mr. Lattimore.
This particular project in land, I'm all in favor of it. I think that past councils had the foresight to buy that land from the RG&E. I think there's 700 acres up there. Thereabouts. There could be a lot done. Hopefully this will prime the pump for economic development in that area. I know Jim, who just got elected, was the mayor up there, and I know there's 3 or 4 projects with the ready monies. I think that this is a rebirth of that whole area. And as the vice chairman of the planning board, it's nice to see this project, and I'd like to see it expand.
Thank you. Any other comments? In that case, let's vote on the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The amendment passes. Now let's vote, if we can, vote on the motion itself. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thanks, Elaine, for that motion.
Public Works.
Mr. Chair, Public Works has 5 resolutions that have been through committee. I would offer them as a bundle unless anyone would like one singled out.
Move it.
I'll second it.
Second, okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. And also now for buildings, I'm not sure why these are separated, but
They're not, they're duplicates.
God, I didn't notice that. Jesus, thank you. I would have had us vote on them again. I think we got to vote on the 5 and then vote no. Just to be confusing. Thank you. So judicial and public safety.
Thank you. Additional public safety has 2. We're gonna do them individually. JP1. Pass the committee, and I make a motion to support JP1.
Second, we have a motion. Can we have a second? Second by Ms. Dealey. Any discussion on JP1? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Thank you.
JP2 was discussed in committee. There was the feeling of the committee to forward it on to Ways and Means. Basically to transfer money to upgrade the computer systems that are in the deputies' cars. And the chair would like the sheriff to address it. It would be up to the chair.
I don't think it's necessary. Unless it's some question. Do we have that motion or the detail of the resolution?
Do you have this, or is Amanda operating?
Amanda's got it.
JP2?
I'd have to look at my notes. I know it was discussed at judicial, but I don't know if there was a motion in a second to bring it.
It was not, and but it's coming before this committee so I've seen the motion. I've seen it. I don't have it with me though.
You mean the resolution itself?
Yes.
Yeah, well, the important thing.
Oh, sorry, I can pull that up. Hold on.
Never mind. And Scott. While she's pulling it up, the important thing about this, and that's what was discussed in committee, is that the computers in the sheriff's vehicles, the road patrol vehicles are their useful life is coming to an end. They can't get parts, they can't be fixed, and so as they fail, it creates a real problem. So that there's a desire to replace them. What this motion does is it takes money from a variety of accounts, so we don't have to hit it was one of the projects in ARPA that IT had, so we're not going to have to hit ARPA We're not gonna hit the fund balance, but rather we're gonna take money that the sheriff and I think Lynn have found from various sources, and that's what those accounts are. So that's what we're doing here. We're taking money from this year's budget, we're moving it to replace the computers and the patrol cars. So that's, if I could have a motion for that, Mr. Vice.
Move it, Petrus.
And second, good. Now, discussion.
Yeah, this is exactly what I asked the sheriff to do, and I appreciate the work that the sheriff and Lynn did to do this. There's that also, yes. Everybody involved, appreciate it.
Yeah. So are there any questions? No. It's pretty straightforward.
Keith,
Yeah.
what, this another one of those things on the long list of why isn't this going through IT in their budget? Why do we have all these little pieces of IT coming out of different areas? So it'd be nice to, I don't want to sound like Lattimore or anything, but it'd be nice to someday see what we're actually spending on all this stuff.
Thank you for the shout out.
Tucker, I think it was an IT's budget. We just, at this point, we brought the resolution forward to purchase. We just asked the sheriff to see if there was any mechanism within his budget to help cover the cost instead of taking it all from the ARPA funds. But I think it is in the IT budget.
So I guess, I don't have an issue with that. I mean, it only makes sense. But do we have a mechanism where Lynn can make this show up in IT's budget and go through there? So it's all in one spot, or will it already be there, missing that piece?
Tucker, this is Lynn.
Hey, Lynn.
That they are increasing the computer account, that account on the bottom, that 16102. So this
Right.
expenditure will show in the IT account.
Okay, so we'll be able to look back and see it there.
Exactly. We'll be able to see it in there. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good, thank you. So, and the last one we have for this committee tonight is ledge 1. It's a resolution regarding the 2021 shared services plan. You could have a motion for that?
Move it.
Second, okay, motion and second. This is what Lynn presented, whenever it was, fairly recently. Anyone have any questions of Lynn? Glad she's on the line. Just don't give the rest of us we know. Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, very good. So, with that, I think what I would like to do, well, I don't know. Rich, does it matter if we adjourn this meeting and then reconvene with the special waste meeting versus just continuing into the special meeting?
No, I don't think it matters one way or the other.
Sure.
Why don't we
I'd like
do
to make
this?
a motion to adjourn this meeting with a 5-minute recess.
Okay, a motion to adjourn and to reconvene in 5 minutes. Second? Is that a second, Mr. Foley?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned for 5 minutes. Yeah, I don't think so bad.
Who's making all the noises?
Paul, can you hear me?
I can.
I'm just wondering what departments are going first with government apps, do you know?
I do not know. It'd be Foley's.
Is Mr. Foley on there right now?
He's out bullshitting.
We're gonna see what Keith has for the chair of that. Is that fine?
Yeah.
You're the chair, aren't you?
It's a budget workshop presented by Ways and Means. I'm not the chair of that committee. Okay, get your story straight here. Pink, we are still streaming too, okay?
What do you want me to say?
Hey, Paul, this is Steve. Just to clarify, this is for specific departments, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you.
2022 budget order. So Mark, Jim, join us or not? No.
I'm in.
Sorry. Okay. No, it's okay. So Lynn. Oh.
Yes.
I just told Sue and Dawn are here, and they didn't see a good place to sit, so I said, wait in the hall, and when you're up, we'll get you, they're up first, right?
They are.
I'll grab them. Keep it, I got it.
Okay, tell them they're up.
You guys are up. Here we go. Here we go.
Oh, they're coming.
Where'd you get those M&Ms?
Secret stash.
Gotta ask nicely.
Okay, Lynn.
Thank you, sir.
So I guess we're starting with government operations, and we'll jump right in with the county clerk. I'm just giving you the general overview of their department. There was no significant changes in the county clerk's department. And for motor vehicle department, there was we budgeted a decrease in revenue, kind of based on the performance that's happening in 2021. There was also a slight increase in their salaries because of a change that happened during 21. So it was not a budget request for 22, but we had converted someone from part-time to full-time, so that's kind of reflected in there. There were also no other significant changes for the records retentions or the county historian's office. So all I have to like highlight for you. And if there's-
And I know Sue's got a discussion.
Right, we had, during our budget discussions, we had talked about a $5,500 addition to the records budget. And we are applying for a grant this year, New York State Archives grant. And they want to see that the county is going to buy into it as well, the whole grant and to digitize records. So we have to have something in there that shows they're going to buy into this and be part of the grant. And that if we get the grant, we'll be using that money. If we don't get the grant, we won't use it. 5,500. The grant we're going for is a shared services grant as the town of Velasco. And it's going to be highest you can get is $150,000.
Any questions for that? We'll make a note and talk about that Thursday. Thanks. Then? Still up.
The next department would be information technology. We did increase the revenue a little bit in that department. They did receive some revenue from the health department and social services based on the services they provide. So we just up that a little bit based on historic, what we've been paying them. We had a large increase in this department in the area of equipment and computers and servers. We increased by $290,000. There was a much bigger ask for an increase in that department, and we, instead of increasing the account up to $800,000, we increased it up to $390,000 and more. Kind of, we're trying to look at a phase-in approach of maybe spending that value over the next 3 years instead of trying to do it all at once. And it's kind of to do, obviously Tom can explain more, but it's not just for this building, it's for a lot of buildings, and a lot of things are really outdated and really, if they fail, they have to be replaced anyhow. So he obviously doesn't want that to happen. He wants to be able to replace them before there's any failure. So we did increase that in here. There also was he asked for a larger increase in the computer software line. We did reduce it a little bit from when he asked, but it still is up couple $100,000, and that is also going to include to move us to Office 365. So we did include that. So there definitely is some investment here in the IT department for some infrastructure.
Thanks. Does anyone have any questions on the budget on the increase? Ms. Foley?
Yeah, Lynn, just to be clear, for that reduction from the 850 to the 390, so you can do a kind of phased-in approach.
Right.
Did he say that he can work with a phased-in approach with 390? Okay. just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure.
we talked with Tom about it before, just changing it. Yeah, and some of it's in different buildings. Obviously, if we're talking about maybe making some changes in this building, he's not going to revamp it as if we're going to be staying in this building. So whether he'll work on some other buildings first, I mean, I don't know, whatever is the most critical that could fail quicker, he might, kind of do some different things in different buildings. So at least he'll have some money to work with to start working on that. So that's it for government ops. I mean, that's.
Wait,
Sorry.
Trish has a question.
I had a question about the IT budget. With the contractual services, it looks like it's the same, generally the same as last year. And I was wondering about, does this reflect any plans to transition from contract to in-house staff for the IT department?
No, I can point out that the professional services line on page 57, where there's 750,000 up from 733. They're actually not even going to spend 733 this year. So really, he did include some additional funds in this line, but we did not budget for a change. You know, he's saying it would be budget neutral if we hire staff and get rid of contractors. So if we decide to move forward with those resolutions, we would just move the funds from one account to the other one. So nothing has been budgeted here to be differently.
Any other questions? Great. So moving on, health and human services.
So the first department we're going to start with is public health department. We did have include in here an additional staff in their salary count, a senior public health educator, to kind of help with the response to COVID and a lot of the different grants that they've been receiving and the administration, that they've had a lot of additional duties put on them for that. We also have an increase in part-time staff. A lot of that just kind of happened during the year. When we brought on a lot of staff, you'll notice the budget for that line is up quite a bit just from all the part-time nurses that we brought on to help in that department. There is also an increase in program expenditures related to the preschool program. We've had increases in tuition and transportation costs. So overall, the budget is up there about $125,000 as a mandated program. So we, you know, do have to pay whatever the needs are for the residents in the county for that program.
Does the legislature have any questions on this budget?
So we would like to ask the legislature for consideration of adding a part-time early intervention service coordinator. It wasn't in the budget, so we'd like hopefully to be in the final budget at a cost of $23,544. And Lori Fisher's here, she's the director of that program. What do you want to talk about why it's needed?
Wait a minute, let me think about this. Well, it's okay. Our rule has been, the way we've done it so far, is we said, if it's in the budget, it was cut, absolutely. We can request it and discuss it and make a case for it. If it's not in the budget, you can do what you just said, but the rationalization is going to have to, you're going to have to get it, this is what we've done so far, you have to get an advocate on the committee for Thursday. Change.
Can I just clarify? That wasn't in the tentative, that was in their request in a tentative budget and it was cut.
Oh, I didn't think it was.
It was there.
Never mind.
It
I was thinking
there.
it wasn't there.
And now
Yes,
this is their opportunity to ask for reconsideration.
Yeah, I thought it wasn't in the budget.
No, it
I
was.
thinking it my bad.
Thank you, Elaine. Hi, Lori Fisher. So the part-time position actually is working right now. So my request is to retain her in a lesser part-time manner as an initial service coordinator, just because of the sheer numbers of increase in the workload of the kids coming forward. So the makeup of our program is we have one initial service coordinator and then 3 ongoing service coordinators. Today, as of today, we have 41 kids in the intake status. And for early intervention, we have regulatory requirements of timelines that are to be kept and met. And with the one full-time service coordinator, initial service coordinator, we're having a real hard time seeing the trending of keeping those timelines in check and in bay. So we already have this part-time. She was a backfill. We got approval for some overlap, but now seeing what I'm seeing, the request is to keep her on permanently as a part-time staff.
Wait, I thought you had 4 full-time service coordinators in your budget.
So there are 4 full-time. One is an initial who gets intakes. The other 3 are ongoing.
And they're all filled.
They are, we just Monday finally filled. So
So this would put you at 4.5.
4.5, correct. And so right now that half-time spot has been extremely valuable in keeping the timelines and regulatory requirements where they need to be. I know there was some overlap approved with her and our last fill,
There was.
which was I'm very grateful for, and I'm just asking, the consideration of keeping her on in that part-time status.
And in your mind, even when the newest hire gets fully trained and oriented, it won't be enough? Or it could be time limited, that
It
you
could be
still
time-
need this part-time to help
There's still
transition?
that need, I think COVID did us all in the last couple of years, but in the birth to 5 population, the increase in referrals. Do have data, I can get it, get it to you, however, but, there's certainly, we see that trend. We looked at the past 5 years, we kind of even took 2020 out of it because it was an odd year. So the past 5 years, we looked at averages, and for 2021, we've already well exceeded that average, and the year's not even over yet as far as numbers for all 4 of our programs. So not only early intervention, but we have child find, preschool special education. So the volume has just increased workloads. So
You'd love it to be institutionalized as full-time or ever, part-time, keep it on, but at minimum, you really need it to help with the transition. You're
at minimal, yes.
at minimum. And the 23 was the figure that would have to be added.
It
to
was 23 was the figure, yes.
23 what?
I got a figure.
554, 544.
23,544.
Great.
Is there anything else? Thanks.
The next department is mental health. We did have some increase in the mental health fees in the budget for 2022. And we also had a transition for having a full-time salary there for a full-time mental health director instead of being only partial salary that was allocated there. That's kind of the only significant.
There's one thing I want to draw people's attention to for next year, so you don't forget. That is one of the costs that the state has passed on to us is the full cost for the competency evaluation, which is not insignificant. It's a huge cost. We talked about in the budget, whether or not to budget that or not. I think it's currently budgeted, it's about 80,000. That's what it's always been. But it's easy to spend several hundreds of thousands of dollars if you get multiple people to have to do it. So the decision was, instead of putting that in the budget, when those come up, there's going to have to be a resolution that draws the fund balance down to pay for that cost. And the reason for that are a couple. One is it's a good way to make sure it's always in consciousness of the legislature that this is not an operational cost. It's a special cost. It's also a good way to remind the legislature that we need to lobby the state to change that system. Until the last year, I think, maybe year before, it was track of time. In recent years, the state had half the cost. They decided to pay none of the cost. And so it all comes to us, and it's a big cost. No matter whose budget it's in, it's going to bloat it. So that money's not budgeted, but there needs to be an understanding that if the court orders that evaluation, it's got to be paid. So just put that, those that will be here next year, put that in the back of your mind so that the don't say, what is this? Well, you can still say, what is this? But then go, oh, right. Are there any questions on the budget other than that? Mental health? Have you guys any comments?
There was a change, yeah, like we had added, so we had added a position in the front office, and I think it was right, and it was taken out. So, I mean, we've talked quite a bit over the past year and a half, 2 years about how much work is happening there, how many people are coming in. There's an awful lot of traffic. Front office staff hasn't really been increased since we started with the open access. There's a lot of work that goes on related to intake, assessments, insurance taking, crisis calls, moving people through the wait room more efficiently. we were able to pay for it with a revenue projection. So I would just ask that you guys consider putting that position back in to sort of help us out for this time. Like,
What was that position again? Senior clerk?
clerk typist or something.
What was it? Senior typist. Senior typist.
Any questions about that or anything else? Ms. Swag?
Ray, with the COVID for the last couple of years, the burnout rate, mental stress, is way up. I mean, how much did your budget change from last year to this year?
Probably couldn't tell you that off the top of the head. Carol, I think Carol's on the line. Are you there, Carol?
Yep, I'm on the line. As far as the total budget or,
Yeah.
He was spending.
I think the actual cost went down from the last year's budget.
We had eliminated like 4 positions last year and we claimed 2 of them. So the overall budget sort of been stable. We've been able to accomplish the proper staffing pattern by moving people around, cutting some positions that weren't revenue generating, swapping them for other ones. So the cost doesn't change so much, but the revenue increases that way. Is that answer?
Yeah. I'm just worried about that whole department. With
So
the,
am I.
with the stressors from the outside. I don't know whether we got enough people on the bench ready to go in.
We're really busy. Caseloads are higher than they've ever been. I mean, prescribers have 350, 375 cases each. Therapists are carrying about 150, 160 cases.
So they've had to double down.
They're working really hard. Really hard.
The senior typist, is that an administrative position?
Yep.
Is that not related to billing Medicaid and third-party revenue, administrative?
Well, it's collecting the information and processing the information that allows for us to do that.
So that's there.
Brian has one.
Brian?
Did you put in for any additional therapist positions with such high caseloads in this budget?
There's some funding that stayed in there in the contract line to be able to hire a half-time contract prescriber and a couple of contract therapists.
Okay.
County employees. under contract.
Can you talk just a moment about the revenue shortfall for this year?
Yeah, so what we found during COVID is most of the stuff, there's a waiver for telehealth, right? So you can use phone, you can talk on the phone, and then we have a platform that we can do telehealth with. There's a lot of conflicts in that platform that we have with the 8x8, which disconnects it. So the billing is related to how long you're in a session for. So there's a rate for like 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, a lot of drop calls, a lot of interruption in the telehealth. So I think while the volume is high during this year, that's sort of been a problem. Also, too, the building wasn't capable of having enough bandwidth to have people doing telehealth. So therapists were getting kicked off on our end too. So we talked to the new IT guy, Tom, and he's looking at.
It's like wigs.
So that happened.
Put a little pupper on it.
What's that?
Put some pepper in it.
Like Sam there.
I don't know how that is, but. So there's a new trunk in the building that costs us a ton of money to sort of upgrade the internet there, so we don't get kicked off all the time. And he's looking at some other platforms that are more compatible with this sort of 8x8, so it doesn't conflict that way. So we expect that that's going to be addressed that way. So that's really what happened with that.
Well, what was the number, revenue shortfall?
I'm not sure we're going to have a shortfall at the end of the year. I think we're usually sometimes at this place right around the last time I looked at the budget. I've got September's numbers. There's a delay in billing. We're not able to process the billing so much, so you're not looking at accurate, sort of up-to-date information from a revenue perspective. Typically, as the year goes on, we see that reduction, and then we see it catch up over time. So I can give you a clearer report by doing a little bit more analysis of it. Plus, we have additional money that we move related to state aid and other sort of sources of revenue to sort of balance it out at the end of the year. So we can figure out a way to make it work typically. but that did definitely impact us.
Any other questions? Great,
Thank you.
Okay, next is the Office for the Aging, and there were no significant budget changes for them.
Anyone have questions for the Office of the Aging?
We just went through a census. Cayuga County is getting older.
Yeah, but just anecdotally, this fascinated me, and forgive me for digressing, but it was so interesting to me. There was an article in the New York Times today or yesterday about Japan. Japan now, as the elderly in Japan consume more diapers than newborns. That's an aging population. It's a remarkable piece of data. I couldn't believe it. Whoa.
That's definitely a sign to get back to the budget.
So sorry for the digression. It was just, I wouldn't have thought of it except for census.
That's okay.
Forgive me. Okay. Any other questions for the Office for the Aging?
I forgot where we.
I forgot too.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, man.
Okay, if there's no questions.
I forgot.
Good, okay. Social services is next. There were a few changes there. We did increase the preventive services in social services to include a new contract, hopefully with someone to do JD diversion services. Some of the work that was previously performed by probation. The staff is actually down by one person, so they're not adding any staff to the budget. We also had an increase in adult protective housing expenditures, but that was offset by some decreases in safety net assistant expenditures. We kind of were moving some of the caseload for a slightly better reimbursement over to adult protective. We had a decrease in Medicaid expenditures due to some federal funding that's enhanced in the CARES Act. We definitely have that through March 31st of 2022. We're not sure if it will extend past that. That's all the legislation has been enacted for at this time. So that saved us $600,000 in the budget from last year's budget. We are budgeting now, however, an offsetting increase in foster care by $600,000. So the same has kind of played true out in 2021. The Medicaid has been down because of a lot of enhanced federal funding, but our foster care numbers have been way over budget. So we are anticipating better performance hopefully for 2022, but we still, I think in those expenditures are going to be higher in foster care for next year.
So you up down to.
Any questions on social services? You guys have anything to? Great, okay, thank you.
The next one is the youth bureau budget. No significant changes in that. Pretty much straightforward and budget for that.
Questions of youth bureau?
Still budgeting the salary for youth bureau the way it's budgeted. That's long term. The same.
No change so far.
Okay, public safety.
Okay, for the public safety, we're just gonna start with the public defender's office. There is some enhanced revenue for that department. So actually we're budgeting a decrease in the local share for that department.
Okay, public defender questions. That budget's pretty straightforward. And if you by the way, you guys online, if I don't see you, just speak up. I don't want to bypass any questions you may have.
Lloyd's just been getting more state aid to offset the cost of these sign lots of programs. Right? That's good news for the county. Yes. What is the local contribution for?
You know, Linda's a smart alecky responsible. But
Look
I
yourself.
see,
Look
I
yourself.
see she's holding back.
No, it's late, Keith, I got nothing left. Be smart aleck. I mean, actually, the local share, it reduced from 640,000 to 429.
Wow.
And
I missed
it is
that.
it is the revenue that's been increased.
Yeah, that's good, but that won't last forever, I'll guarantee you, so. Okay, great. Any other questions? Thank you.
Next is 911. Not a lot of significant changes there. We did increase some revenue for grant. And we're consistently getting $75,000.
Okay, any questions? 911? Yeah.
There again, the turnout rate with our employees and the cost of retraining.
So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. I had 2 positions requested in the budget. We went back to as far as 2006. We were pooling from about 20 people at that point. We're pooling from about 23 now, with a lot of changes to technology, to our dispatching. We look at things like a structure fire 10 years ago, how it was dispatched, and there was maybe 1 department, simply because of departments having new responders. Today, the volunteer service has declined immensely, so a structure fire is generally 4 to 5 departments, which is a lot more on a dispatcher. We've taken on Auburn City Ambulance, we've taken on emergency medical dispatch. My staff is really becoming taxed. We're seeing burnout rates at 8-10 years. We shouldn't see that for at least 15 plus years. They have a 30-year retirement right now. They finally have passed the 911 Saves Act, which declares them as first responders, but that doesn't change their retirement right now. There are times when, I went through just last week calls. There were 10 calls that were what I would consider a significant delay in dispatch, which is anywhere from 3 to 7 minutes. An EMS call shouldn't sit on a screen for more than 60 seconds, 90 at most. And that was simply because everybody's on the phone. There's nobody to dispatch calls. So, we looked at how many calls Ben's been answering as the deputy. He shouldn't be answering phones. There are so many times when he has to pick up a line because staff just can't handle it. So, the best way to manage that is unfortunately to add staff. We have 1 out on a medical leave right now. We have 1 vacancy, and 1 coming back in the summer, another 1 going out in January. And that's part of our hurdle is, just when we think we're good with staffing, we've got somebody who goes out on medical leave. We just can't survive when that continues to happen. So looking at, our overtime budget over the last 7 years, we're anywhere between 35 and 40,000 over budget. Our salaries come in under budget, somewhere around 60,000. So I think at the end of the day, adding 2 positions really is not going to have a significant increase on our budget. Because inevitably we're going to have vacancies. We always do. We always lose somebody during the year, whether it be for another county position, whether it be for a better paying position, somebody goes to law enforcement, somebody goes to a fire department. My other thought is if we can get these 2 positions, we would really only need to budget them half the year, because we won't have a new list until probably March or April. And by the time we go through the full process of hiring, the interview process, the background process, that's an extensive process. It would probably be June before we hire. So I would safely say if we were able to get the positions, we would only need a budget half the year for both of them, because we don't have a list right now. I mentioned this in our meeting last week that we're seeing a significant decline in the amount of people taking the class, a significant decline in what our list ends up being, and people wanting to, that's not a job people want at this point in life. We're really seeing some hardships with that. It's definitely having an impact on the staff that we have. You know, I worry about the mental health of some of them, you know, they're one call to the next, you know, without break. It wears on them. It really does. So I have 21 full-time positions right now. We have one vacancy.
I didn't join.
Mr. Vitale, you make a point.
Yeah, we talked about this during the budget process. We talked about it a little bit in committee the other night. And Denise is correct in the fact that right now there's not a list to draw from social services. From social- Civil service. Not quite the same. From civil service, and you won't even be able to start training until probably April or May. And my feeling is, I think we all understand that there is a crisis in that whole area. But for the budget process currently right now, since there really can't be much done until spring, I think it would be a great opportunity to gather data in the next couple of months. We don't really know exactly how much the city ambulance is going to affect the call-ins and things like that, but it would be an opportunity to really get a real good exact number on that kind of stuff. The other thing I wanted to point out in this budget, the contingency account is doubled, it went from 100,000 to 200,000. So I think it would also offer an opportunity for the 2022 legislature to look at all of that in February, March, or maybe even January, and start thinking about that. I think Denise has some legitimate discussion items when she says, you know, it isn't going to be for the full year because you can't hire anybody for a while. So at this present time, I would probably not support putting it in the budget now, but I would definitely bring it to the attention of the 2022 legislature to really be considering it. And there is money in the contingency account that would, I think, take care of the issue when the time is right.
Any other comments?
Right, Kelly, one thing I would add is we did run some stats, and we will continue to do this. Auburn City Ambulance came online November 1st. They've done 318 calls. It's the first. That's a significant number of calls.
I just want to add so that everybody in the legislature knows, our county just picked up Summer Hill. That's going to be an added, call line to the 911 center. So, again, that's just something that's added. It's going to add more calls and stress as far as the 911 center.
Yeah.
Lynn, or if we add these positions now, or if we don't add them now, as Mr. Vitale indicates, and we try to add them later, to change the budget, what do we need? A 2/3 majority to change the budget, or simple majority? Simple?
No, or contingency is 2/3.
2/3. So it's much harder for the departments to come back and ask later. I've been up here for a little bit, and getting a 2/3, it's kind of tough. So
Kind of depends on its work. Yes,
it's a hurdle.
It's a higher bar. Yeah. And the vacancy you have now, is there a list for that?
No, I don't have anybody on the active list.
Okay. So we won't.
That's why we have to fill it.
That's going to be vacant until then June.
Correct. Yeah, that's why when I tell you, I really don't think it's going to have a significant impact on our budget at the end of the day. I really don't think it will.
Yeah.
Budget for it, right?
Right, I mean, it ends up being in the budget is the problem.
You're saying it ends up maybe coming back to the general fund, but you gotta
Yeah,
find the
that's
money in the
correct.
budget for it, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, great. Thank you.
The next department would be the coroner's office. They have included some funds to increase the salaries for the part-time coroner investigators. We did include an adjustment of $2,000 for each of them. There's 4 of those positions. We also had to increase a significant increase in the professional services line for the medical examiner services. You know, recently they actually did bring a resolution to adjust their budget for 2021 because of exceeding that. So we increased it. Last year's budget was $160,000. We have $225,000 in there for next year. Yeah, so it's like increase in the transportation.
How do normally those salaries move to the non-bargaining part-times? I mean,
Yes, I mean, the salaries are roughly $6,500 each. It's kind of like a stipend. They're not paid per hour. It's an annual salary that they get. So obviously you give them a, 2% increase. They
get
don't move by a
similar
heck of a lot, right?
right, they get similar increases as, yeah, okay, but with small salary.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
I've had some discussions with the coroner. One of the areas that may be a rising cost in the near future is delivery service. We have a delivery provider that is probably one of the lowest rates in the state. And that could possibly go away at any time. So I just want to make everybody aware that, that could change in 2022. And there might need to be some consideration to increase that budget by 2022. But currently, the rates are staying steady and something to keep on the horizon.
So this is a caution.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments?
Price of gas is up.
For example.
Okay, the next budget would be the district attorney's office. We did include some funds to convert a part-time investigator to a full-time position in 2022. We also included some state aid that we are going to definitely receive next year. That would be for the discovery reform grant, the second year of that. So we did include that in the budget. This year you have the expectation of receiving that.
And I would just like to say, John, congratulations on your thing. I'm assuming that you're going to be taking some staff with you. Is that true? I mean, I'm not asking who or anything, but
My understanding is that I am allowed to hire a law clerk or attorney to help me, as well as a supporter. Most likely, I can bring some from the office.
well, yeah, and the significance of that, I think, is I know you've always been, not always, but frequently you're concerned about starting salaries. What I would suggest you do is make a list of those positions that may move, not necessarily that will move, but may move, and ask HR to do a position analysis so that if anyone's grade needs to change, all the grading now is based, if someone's been in a position for a long time, it has been regraded a long time. And if you do that, then you're gonna, whether it's you or whether your successor, you're gonna have a better idea of what grade it should be and what it's gonna cost and so on. And whomever that is gonna have support for any increase that is gonna be necessary. So that's something to do right away. HR, that's one of the functions that they do. And all you gotta do is request it. And they should get on it. So there's time to do it.
I appreciate that. I think they just, last time, a whole bunch of them, so hopefully they did that.
No, they didn't. I don't think they did. No, they didn't do a full, and I'm talking about a full analysis. I'm not talking about the kind of there's a difference between kind of a table analysis and a full analysis. So all you gotta do is request it and they will do it. I mean, don't make an unnecessary request because it's a lot of work for you, but it's important. That's important to get that right. The other thing that I'll be talking about is that and maybe you can even address this now. There's money in the budget, as mentioned, to take the part-time investigator to full-time. It seems to me what we may want to do is keep that money, keep that money available. So not cut that, but keep that money available so that whoever takes your place, the new district attorney, can look at the staffing patterns and what needs to be done and make a decision about whether he or she wants to take that part-time to full-time or whether he or she needs a different kind of position. It just makes sense since we're going to be transitioning. So that's, what do you think about that?
Well, we've been, due to shortages in the staffing at the office, we've been essentially paying this position more hours than part-time for several years. In fact, it was going to be added to last year's growth budget that it was pulled. I'm glad to see that this group is addressing that. There has been enough funding each year because of vacancies to pay that. If we put the money in there, hopefully it'll be better. Years since I've been here, it's leftover money at the end of the year, but we certainly need the help. That's year working full time. The traffic reduction program has generated revenue to cover that as well. I know that you don't want to tie them together, but I think the money's there. So I would urge the group to pass the budget as done. This county has a rule that says if you work more than half the hours for the position, you are deemed a full-time position. We have sort of been not doing that because of both several years ago when I asked for it, last year it was going to be. So it's an opportunity here to do that. It won't change, as far as I know, anything that's done in the budget. The person working full-time hours.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting changing the budget. I'm wondering if we should give whoever replaces you some flexibility in how to expend that budget. But what I hear you saying is no.
Well, what I would propose that we keep the ship in the same configuration as now. If the new captain wants to reconfigure the ship, I think it'd be better to do it that way rather than leave this unfinished before.
You can't reconfigure if all the money's spent.
Well, no, but you could, if they decide they don't need a full-time investigator, they can reduce it and move money somewhere else. As long as it's in the budget, it would only require a majority as opposed to the 2/3.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about putting contingency. And I'm talking about leaving the money there, however we would have to do it, so it's available, but just not assigning it to that position. So think about that.
Thank you.
See. Mr. Lattimore.
Yeah, I'd like to commend you on the job well done over the years. Sometimes it's tough up on the 6th floor to try to get things done, but
I certainly appreciate all of this group's help over the years.
but I'd like to see your predecessor have the flexibility and not be micromanaged, like we have done in some of the ledge meetings that I've seen. So, I mean, if we have a disagreement with the budget, that's one thing, but as a manager of your department, you should be able to have flexibility to staff up or staff down according to what the public needs. This is a public safety issue, and I think that I want to make sure that in the future, we don't try to micromanage that.
Well,
The government.
yeah, exactly. Okay, any actually questions for this budget? Do you have anything, John, that or are there any comments that we need to make?
No, the budget, thank you. The budget is essentially what it's been for the last several years. It doesn't really make any changes. It does codify the part-time, full-time investigator. Beyond that, it's pretty much what we've been doing. And there's a couple minor decreases, but essentially it's flat line other than increased healthcare and things like that. It's not quite, but I think this is a fair budget that's been proposed. We ask that you support it and pass it.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, the next would be the emergency management office. One thing that we did include there was an additional fire EMS coordinator. It's quite a small salary.
Any questions on this budget? I don't think anything was cut, as I remember, so. Very good. Next,
Probation is the next budget. They didn't have any significant changes. The one thing I did do is we did include some state aid in there for the raise the age funding. That was reauthorized in the state budget last year, so they will be receiving some funds actually right this year and next year. So we did include that this time in the budget.
questions on probation? Very good. Any? So- Is that right?
Jay.
Okay, John, see that.
Yeah.
Jay, do you have any comments on your budget? Is there anything that you to bring to our attention?
No, as Lynn, I think fairly characterized it, no significant changes. We were happy to see the raise the age funding included. Beyond that, no, nothing substantial for the incoming year.
Thank you.
Next is stop DWI. I would point out that, there is no local share to this, but they have had to, decrease their expenditures, their contractual expenditures, because they have had a significant decrease in the revenue that's coming into the program due to arrests and fines that have been happening recently. So we did have to contract that this year and see how things go in the future.
That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But are there any questions? We're almost there.
And last, we have the sheriff's department. A couple of significant things there. We did include funding for a new identification officer in the sheriff's department, but we did actually unfund a corrections officer that's vacant position to help to offset that increase in the sheriff's department. We did include some increased maintenance expenditures in the jail, because that's where they do budget those in the sheriff's department for the jail building, an extra $260,000 on top of their normal maintenance that will hopefully help to cover the cost of some roof repairs, or I guess whatever, actually gets prioritized as being significant things, but those are things that Gary had noted, so we had included that just to start to give them some more capital to be able to do some routine maintenance every year out there that needs to get done.
Any questions on this budget?
Cornell extension. Paul and I were given a list. I can't find my list, but
That's Thursday.
Thursday's gonna be up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well. Okay.
Can I ask you just
Yes, you
one?
may. Of course.
The unfunded corrections officer position, it's currently vacant or it's been vacant for a while. I was just curious if that, what that impact would be.
It's currently vacant. It would be one of our additional positions above and beyond our state mandatory minimum within the correctional division. So that'd be a position.
Any other questions? Oh, what was that?
No, he's just using that unspent revenue to offset the cost of this position. He says yes.
Any other comments? Sheriff, are there anything, I don't think anything was cut from the budget. Okay, great. I think that takes us through. Is there anything else, Lynn?
No, that's it.
Okay, so Thursday, we meet at 5:30. And we have the budget's at 5:30 or Ways and Means. Anything that we missed, I don't think we've missed anything. But for us, that's a final opportunity. Cooperative-
Is there a special ledger meeting Thursday also? for the
Yes.
public hearing?
Yeah, so for us, it's Cornell Cooperative Extension and as well as CETA. I think that's it. And then what we will do is at that point is entertain the motions resolution.
I think the Ways and Means committee is that there too?
Yes. And then we entertain motions to adjust the budget based upon all the stuff we've heard. After that, I think it's after, is it before or after? It's after, right? Amy?
After
After that, there's a public hearing on,
the local law separating mental health from
Yes.
Local
Yes,
offset.
sir.
and
The
minimum
resolution
offset.
is set for public.
Resolution,
Okay.
and the public hearing's December 2nd. So,
December 1.
Oh, it's only the resolution to do the public.
Just set.
Second.
Oh,
So it's a quick.
okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I was thinking, my God, it's gonna be another long night. But I don't think the resolution will be controversial.
I'm sure.
So remember, legislators, if you have any desire to increase any budget, you need to do two things. You need to know the line number, what it is, the expenditure, the account number, I misspoke. Preferably the number, the page number in the budget, which that appears, and where that money is going to come from. At this point, my suggestion was, you can do that however you want to do it, but my suggestion is within reason. It makes sense to look at sales tax, which I think, and spoke to Lynn about that. She tends to concur. She's probably pretty conservative at this point. We probably have a little flex there that's not going to bite us in the butt. So, but that's not an edict to directive or anything else. It's just a point. But it's important that you have, for any increase, you have where the money's going or coming from. A decrease can just go to decrease the budget. Decrease the fund balance draw.
Is this Thursday, are there opportunity to propose changes to the budget?
No.
There's, okay, and then we'll have a public hearing, we can change it after the public hearing
Yes.
as well.
Yes. Although it makes sense if there's.
The only ways, the only ways and means is gonna fall on
There you go.
Thursday.
Yeah, it'll change.
You're not the full
Yes,
legislature.
Ways and Means is going on Thursday. If the change is to a line or something that's been discussed, it makes sense to do it Thursday. If the change is something totally new, it makes sense to do it at the legislature.
Legislators who are not on Ways and Means are subject to just throw up a thing, or isn't this our
They can't
opportunity to
vote.
present to the legislature the Ways and Means recommended budget? It's not. for-
No, well, it's not the budget, it's changes to the budget.
Yes, our tentative budget, the budget being recommended by Ways. So
Yes.
the people on Ways are offering these up so that we can get ready to send them to the non-Ways members. I'm confused now.
Well, yeah, it's a Ways and Means committee.
Right, but
So
no,
only,
but Trish was wondering if she could do it.
No.
oh, you could move something.
Right, that's
Through a ways number.
You absolutely, yes, you absolutely can propose something. It's just that it's a Ways and Means committee, so someone at Ways and Means has to move it the second.
right. You couldn't do it yourself.
Right.
Right,
That's what I
until the
thought.
full ledge.
Right, that's what I
Yeah, I'm
thought
sorry,
was clear.
that forgive me.
But can we stress that, you'll want to get that work done during Ways and Means, where, we could be prepared or whatever. But if something comes up between then and the full ledge, just, work with Lynn or whomever to get that organized and ready, because you don't want to be at the full ledge, we don't have, like utter chaos and you don't have a line or.
Yeah, you got.
Being prepared is.
You really, it makes all the difference, and you really need to do it. You really need to have the line, the account, where it's being, the account being changed up or down, and the account from which money is coming. That's really important. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult. Although I know this group is going to be on top of it. Not like these former groups.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion to adjourn, second.
Second.
All in favor. We're adjourned.
Aye.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for